I am so happy to be able to share with you this crown jewel today, Dr. Richard Isaacson. So Dr. Isaacson is a preventative neurologist who conducts clinical and translational research at the Institute for Neurodegenerative Diseases in Florida. I met Richard a few years ago, and he was the first person that introduced me to the concept of brain health, which completely and totally blew my mind. It's been something I'd never heard of before. So Richard, if I was to go into your bio and your credentials and do that all here right now, we would be here for a long time. You're highly qualified. So let's get into this. So tell me about your why. What brought you to neurology?
So my brother, who's 13 years older than me, he's the smart one in the family. I'm the better looking one, clearly. Glam Squad didn't show up today, but I'll do the best I can. My brother was a neurologist, just starting his training, and 13 years older than me. And I was in like kindergarten sort of thing. He was med school and then neurology training, and I was a little boy. And this is a true story, but my brother actually had one of his med school books called Neuroanatomy Made Easy and Understandable. That's right. And this is like completely ridiculous. I'm not sure if I told this story before, but I'm on a bus, like going to Dollywood in Tennessee or something during summer camp. And of course, I'm the dork that brings this book with me on the bus. And since I was little, I wanted to be a neurologist, I guess. And I was fascinated by the brain. And then, in high school, my very close relative, my great uncle Bob, who actually saved me. I actually am petrified of water. I hate water. I fell into the pool at my Aunt Carol's house when I was 3 years old, and Uncle Bob, a former Navy guy, jumps in. He literally saved my life. I remember coughing and choking and, whatever the water. And he started developing dementia and Alzheimer's disease. They called it senility back then. They didn't know what it was when I was in high school. And, I'm about to go to med school. I have all these aspirations. I know what I want to do. And I went to the doctor with him, and there were 0 treatments for Alzheimer's disease. 0. So I think the confluence of, early exposure from my brother and then a family, interaction said, I need to do something about this disease.
Bruce had an Uncle Bob as well, who was quite influential in his life too.
Oh.
So that's interesting. Like I had mentioned, you were the first person that introduced me to the idea of brain health, which falls under this umbrella of prevention and ways to support an aging brain. I've spoken to a few neurologists in my time, brilliant in their own right, but you were really the only one that's talked to me about how to support the brain that is forever changing and aging. So for some reason, prevention seems to be this dirty word within the neurology world. So I ask why, when prevention seems to be the only glimmer of hope we have right now.
When I was in medical school, there was literally nothing. There was no treatments, there was nothing. And what happens in medical education is, there's so much to learn in school, and then you go through these training, and then you're on call, and you have all this information overload. And mostly like what you learn in medical school and the few years after is what you learn in medicine. And then as new studies come out, you update your practice. But most physicians, 99.9% of physicians, when they learned about dementia and Alzheimer's, it wasn't even treatable, yet alone preventable. And that's okay. Science evolves. Something that's going to be proven in medical science today, like a publication, a research paper that proves something today, it takes on average 15 to 20 years for that finding to be integrated into routine clinical practice. Today, we know that we can prevent heart attacks and prevent strokes. Great. But 15 or 20 or 30 years ago, that was not possible. We could treat them sort of with aspirin and things like that. But now we have many treatments for heart attacks and strokes, and we can prevent if we start early enough. And I think a lot of people talk about, we need a cure. I mean, when someone has had a diagnosis of dementia, that means the diagnosis really started decades before, 20 years, 30 years before sometimes. So in my mind, prevention is a cure, but you have to start so early. And, in our practice, see people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And when we already start seeing someone with symptoms, maybe we can help. But when someone already has dementia, that person's had the disease for 20 to 30 years. So prevention in my mind is a cure. And I don't want to be too overly, suggestive. 4 out of every 10 cases of dementia may be preventable if that person does everything right. We can go through what those everything right is. Now, everything right is different for each individual person. That's even more confusing. But there's a lot of cases of dementia that maybe we can delay it by a little bit, and maybe we can help a little bit, but they're still going to have dementia. So, I want to promise not to overpromise, but I really believe that, we can do something to take control of our brain health today.
When would you like to start seeing people coming to you, or to, just to start? Gosh, I wish there was just this routine sort of checkup for cognitive decline, or, just to check on a yearly checkup, where are you cognitively? Would you think that will happen? And when should people start thinking about their brains?
Yeah, the question of how early is too early is a question I get occasionally. And what I can say is that the food that a pregnant mother eats affects the cognitive outcomes of the child decades later. Whoa. So we were just talking about seeing people in their 20s and 30s now, and listeners may be like, well, with 20s and 30s, brain health, what? No, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that's when people have to worry about dementia. But actually, it starts sooner. There are early life, midlife, and late life risk factors for cognitive decline and dementia. And most people don't really characterize it that way. And yes, a maternal diet rich in B vitamins is tied to better cognitive outcomes decades later. More education in the early life tied to better cognitive outcomes later. In midlife, we have to think about vascular risk factors, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, things like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is at any moment, at any time, we can make an impact on our brain health. Now, I don't have much experience with kids or teens. The youngest person I've actually ever seen is about 25-ish years old. But, certain people with certain genes probably need to eat more fish when they're, early in life and to support their brain health. People that want to reduce their risk should stay in school and, get educated, wear a helmet, head trauma. Certain people with certain genes should avoid pesticides, especially, early in life and throughout their lives. And I think the complexity here is one day we're going to have, a blood test or a genetic test that can say, okay, in your life course, you want to maybe do this, this, and this, and maybe avoid that, that, and that. And we're not there yet, but those things should start, to be honest, early as possible.
Okay, so I read an article that you wrote where you said that only a handful of neurologists focus on prevention. And because of that, you have a 5-year waiting list to be seen within your clinic. What is the disconnect, and why do you see things differently as a neurologist?
Yeah, well, so let's talk about prevention and preventative health, first of all, as a field. So our medical system in the United States is a treatment disease-based medical system. I don't want to fault patients. I don't want to fault doctors. I want to fault the medical system. And no, I'm not going to rail on insurance companies or, or pharma, whatever. No, it's just the way that our medical system is currently set up, where a doctor sees a patient for a problem. And that problem is a diagnostic code that an insurance company or a government payer then reimburses the doctor for their time. There is no diagnostic code for dementia prevention. There is no diagnostic code to reduce risk for Alzheimer's or, prevent, any sort of neurodegenerative disease. So how can a doctor see a patient if they can't be incentivized or even, just break even? When we started the first Alzheimer's prevention clinic in the United States over a decade ago, we lost a lot of money. It was tough. 70% of our funding came from philanthropy and grants. We literally needed to be subsidized by other people and other grants and foundations and whatever else, because the clinical revenue that came in wasn't enough. No diagnostic codes. We were getting literally 28 cents on the dollar. We would do cognitive assessments to get a baseline. You said earlier, when is it too early? Well, we would get a cognitive baseline on people. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could get cognitive baselines on everybody? Back then we had to do testing in the office with computers. Now we can send people a link and they can do the cognitive baseline at home. We're actually working on, and actually, I can talk about this soon. We're launching a study, 53 and above. You can actually join a free study and we can do cognitive testing on the phone, which is like amazing. And every 6 months or every year, every 2 years, you can just, take that test and get a baseline. And there's no cost to that, and there's no expensive whatever, and no blood draws and things like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, why don't doctors do it? That's complicated. I think patients also, I think, have been scared. Fear is paralyzing. I have 4 family members with Alzheimer's. You've seen this. I mean, you've been on the front lines. The amount of empathy I have for you and your family. This is just a horrible. Dementia is just horrible. It's gut wrenching. It's terrible. And people are fearful. They don't want to think about dementia. It's stigmatizing. They don't want to talk about it. So they're not going to be, motivated to act if they're paralyzed in fear. And also, until a few years ago, you couldn't even find anything about brain health or dementia prevention on the internet, or doctors weren't talking about it. It wasn't in the textbooks. Dr. Google's now talking about it, and you can go to ChatGPT and, bring things up. But this is all new. But I think there's no time like the present for people to grab the bull by the horns and feel empowered and be their own citizen scientists to move things forward.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you were speaking to me about brain health and the things that we should be doing, I mean, my mind was blown. I'd literally, I know I'm pretty up to date on wellness, I would think, in ways that I need to look after myself, but brain health was just really never even a thought. So yeah, it was really game changing for me. And sort of now, as I approach my health, I really go with brain first. And I feel like the rest benefits. And that's with exercise and diet. And I don't do it all perfectly, but for the most part, it's like, I'm always thinking about what did I do for my brain today? And that really comes from you. I have to be honest. It really changed my whole thinking. And I think also too, when you are navigating it with someone that you love and you see what can happen, there is fear that's there. It's a horrible disease and you just wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So I will always look after my brain from here on out. So, okay. So what are some ways that we can protect our brain today?
How many hours do we have?
I know. I mean, give me your top 3, 5. I'm not sure. I don't know.
You can't keep me to 3 or 5. Come on.
I know. So you just go. You do your thing.
This is the beauty, right? Like 15, 20 years ago, if you had 2 minutes, that would be enough time. When I started the first Alzheimer's prevention clinic in the country over a decade ago, we had, let me get this right, we had like 10 things on our treatment list and about 20-ish things on our overall universe of possible things to reduce risk and protect brain health. In our research study that we published in 2019 that kind of made lots of waves and really for the first time showed that this way of reducing risk and taking control of your brain health that needs to be personalized for each individual person. So that's one of the complexities. We had over 50 different individual things in our universe that could be applied individually and in a personalized, targeted way to the person. So what I first want to say is there's a lot we can talk about. Each person, Mrs. Smith, she has one set of genetics. She's either going through or going to go through or already went through the perimenopause transition, which, we should probably talk about that because that's really, women's brains, every 2 out of 3 brains affected by Alzheimer's disease, specifically the most common form of dementia, is a woman's brain. And we used to say we don't know why, but now I think we do know why. Women need to do different things depending on which epoch they're at in their in their journey, and women are going to need to do one thing. Mr. Smith, he may need therapies X, Y, and Z. He's a man, but he also has different life exposures, different experiences, different genetics, different medical problems. So before I kind of get into okay, what can I do? What can I do right now? And I'm happy to give free resources that anyone can jump online and learn about, and whatever, take a deeper dive. But the number one thing is it's individualized. It's not like everyone has to do X, Y, and Z. In terms of low-hanging fruit, by far the number one thing a person can do is exercise on a regular basis. It sounds like silly, but no, just like you are what you eat when it comes to brain health, the amount of activity you do Like the number one thing you can do right now to lower this pathologic protein, this plaque, this sticky plaque called amyloid that builds up in brains of people with Alzheimer's and also Lewy body dementia, is exercise. Parkinson's disease and also Lewy body dementia has this different protein called alpha-synuclein. Again, exercise, amazing. Frontotemporal dementia, a little more, actually not a little more, a lot more complicated. There are definitely things that can be done, but not perfect, like very far from perfect. And there are certain types of frontotemporal dementia, genetic causes that are like even more difficult. So I guess what I want to say is, aside from an individualized approach, depending on the person, the plan for risk reduction for cognitive decline and dementia will depend on the specific type of dementia or dementias, that you're trying to solve for. Yesterday, saw someone who honestly has Alzheimer's on one side and Parkinson's on the other side. And now we got to figure out like what is this person at risk for? And we have to figure it out. We can now do these blood tests that weren't around even a few years ago, skin biopsies that can look at things. These things we can do now are amazing. So anyway, I'm sorry to get off track, but that's how complicated this is. So exercise is the number one thing a person can do. What type of exercise? Cardiovascular, strength training.
I'm going to say it. I was going to say cardio.
Cardio. Well, both. So anything and everything.
Yeah.
And depending on the genetics and depending on a person's muscle mass and body fat, we want to fine tune or refine the exercise plan. So as the belly size gets larger, the memory center in the brain gets smaller. And the way to lose belly fat is to really engage in prolonged periods, at least 45 to 60 minutes of steady state, meaning regular, lower intensity cardiovascular training. So that may be a pulse rate of 100, 120, 130, depending on the person, and doing that several times a week. Strength training is critical. If you don't build muscle mass and then have enough protein intake in order to build the muscle, you can't improve metabolic health so you can burn calories later. So strength training is critical. And then high intensity interval training is also really critical in certain people, especially people with the ApoE4 variant. That's a genetic variant. You can check it on 23andMe and check it in, some doctors check it, most doctors don't. But depending on the genetics, you may need to personalize the exercise plan. So moral of the story is anything's better than nothing. Slow and steady wins the race. You don't want to get hurt. If you don't know about exercise, learn, work with a personal trainer. It's obviously there's a cost to that, but it's important. But stay active. Even walking, fast walking is better than nothing. So exercise is absolutely critical. Nutrition goes hand in hand with exercise. The Mediterranean style diet, green leafy vegetables, at least 1 or 2 servings a day, fatty fish, lake trout, mackerel, herring, albacore, tuna, wild salmon, much better than farm raised because they have those plentiful omega-3 fatty acids. Alcohol in low or moderate amounts, or even less is more. I personally believe that less is more with alcohol, especially when you drink 2 glasses of wine right before bed. Some people say, wine's good for you, red wine. Well, 2 glasses right before bed is going to mess up your sleep-wake cycles. And during sleep is when the trash gets taken out and the amyloid gets, disposed of. Exercise loosens it up, and sleep takes out the trash. So alcohol in low amounts earlier in the meal, early in the day, maybe 1 glass of wine a few times a week, better than more. Caffeinated coffee, probably a good thing early in the day. Caffeine, as long as someone can tolerate that, probably has neuroprotective effects, both on Parkinson's, Lewy body, as well as Alzheimer's disease. Less of the bad carbs. We know what high fructose corn syrup is and the sugars. Artificial sweeteners is a whole different discussion. I'm not excited about those either. Very complicated. But processed foods, the old food pyramid where you had all the carbs, and carbs, that's just marketing and bad. Sugar, bad, spikes insulin resistance, fast forwards cognitive decline. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's, nutrition and diet are probably the pinnacles, but sleep is critical. I think too many people are on like our phones, like right before bed, right? With all the, and then some people I got the 2 phones and then they got the blue light, and it's just like, come on, it's enough. 30 minutes before bed, no devices. Stop checking email.
What about the TV? Can you have the TV on?
I think a TV in the background may be okay, because it's not, when you have this bright light in your face, it's artificial and it's suppressing the melatonin. But I think TV is okay, music is okay. And trying to go to bed the same time every night, getting in a routine, 6 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, just not enough. 7.5 and 8, that should really be the target. I wear my little sleep tracker and I track kind of everything, my sleep and my exercise. We use these trackers and we can learn from them and we can know our data and know our numbers. And there's so much: modifying stress, staying cognitively engaged, protecting one's head. But I think the thing that I really don't want to kind of miss out on is the concept of seeing a doctor regularly and monitoring and really aggressively, comprehensively controlling what we call vascular risk factors. Vascular risk factors to me means cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, fast forwards cognitive decline. High cholesterol, fast forwards cognitive decline. And diabetes, high blood sugar, fast forwards cognitive decline. And I think people that say, my blood sugar is borderline, or my blood pressure, it's a border, it's a 145/90. I'm fine. I'll exercise more and I'll eat less salt. They're missing an opportunity. The optimal blood pressure for brain health is the 120/70s, or ideally below. So all these targets, these normal reference ranges, how many of people out there wanted a C, an average, a C grade in all their classes, or a little below average, a D, right? C's and D's are like 140s or 150s in the blood pressure. To get an A, there's a big difference between normal and optimal health. And when we're shooting for preventative health, we need to be optimal. So getting the blood sugar down, getting the blood pressure down, and getting cholesterol, borderline cholesterol, is abnormal. And it causes a great deal of harm over the course of time, especially over years and decades. So see a doctor regularly, know your numbers, know what your waist circumference is, buy one of those body fat scales for, again, $100, $200. It's not inexpensive, but track these things. Use these trackers to really understand, are the changes you're making in your life making an impact on these measures of brain health.
This is why you're the crown jewel.
Hey, that was
good. That's such good information. Such good information.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned was stress, trying to reduce stress. So I know that chronic stress and anxiety is damaging to the brain. I'm a care partner walking through something that is incredibly distressing daily. So, how can caregivers protect themselves from chronic stress? Is there something that we can be doing? Is there a way to even be able to sort of lower that stress response when you are living a high stress life?
In some ways, I want to flip this question back on you, because we all need to learn from each other about how to do this, because, everyone's going to have their own individual coping mechanisms. Being a care partner is a full-time 24/7 job. We're both parents of two young girls. Mine are a little younger, yours are a little older, but just like when you're a parent of a newborn or a child, you're always on, and at any moment you can get the call, and then at any moment, an hour later or a day later, and it could be throughout the night and throughout the day. And I think we all need to figure out strategies within our own lives. And I think the sooner someone accepts that they're going to need help at some point, the sooner I think they realize that it's okay. It's like asking for help is a dirty word in being in the caregiving space. Just like you said, prevention's a dirty word in neurology, for sure. Asking for help is initially felt to be this dirty word, like I'm giving up, or I'm not a good spouse, or I'm not a good partner, or I'm a bad daughter because I'm not taking care of my mom or dad. No, that's just not, for the person's own safety and well-being. I think asking for help is critical. I'm trying to get family members into not letting everything fall on your own shoulders. This is easier said than done, by the way. Aside from being expensive, hiring help is not easy at all. But unpaid caregiving is, a major national tragedy and a public health urgency, I would say, for sure. And asking for help and not letting things rely on yourself. You may know this stat. I think most people do by now, but oftentimes the care partner passes away or has health conditions at, they may pass away before the person with cognitive decline, dementia. And that's just, I've seen that, like, and that's just the work. If you don't take care of yourself, how can you take care of the person who you love? So I think being realistic and asking for help earlier than later, 8, 9 times out of 10, people wait way too long, way too long to ask for help. And again, it's not just for self-preservation, it's also for the person's own safety. So that's a couple of things. In terms of evidence-based strategies, in terms of like research, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, is something that has a lot of research. It's a technique. You can go online and Google and read about this, and you can learn about ways to whether it's MBSR or meditation or whatever curtain kriya is another type that's very easy to do and free. There's things that you can do to try to relax the mind. And respite care is also critical. Like, it's okay to go away. It's okay to travel. It's okay to, take a break without taking a break for either a few hours or a few weeks here and there. I mean, caregiving is just a full-time job. And for people that aren't caregiving, even through their life course, to reduce risk of cognitive decline later, taking periodic vacations. People, even, I guess with COVID, people work from home, but they're always on the phone, they're always texting, they're always whatever. It's okay to set parameters in life, or just like, don't look at your phone from, 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. Then look at your phone for 30 minutes and then put it away again. Like, whatever rules a person needs to make, being always on, always available. I think that's tricky. Some people need to talk to therapists, maybe see a psychiatrist, and maybe seek treatment. Therapy and counseling, I think, is critical. Seeing a social worker is oftentimes helpful. We have an amazing social worker on our team that we really depend on. But then again, there's resource. This is a resource problem, and it's a costly problem. So while I can keep going and going and going, I think just like with treatment of people and reducing risk, the individual tailoring of these stress reduction paths are critical.
Yeah, for sure. I think for each his own. I think for me, it's important. I get a lot of relief from exercise. Makes me feel a lot better, sort of clears my head.
Yeah.
And therapy has been extremely helpful for me to be able just to dump and express all things. And, someone else to sort of keep me in check of if I'm looking after myself or not, and they kind of know, and when I need to sort of, turn the volume up on sort of more self-care and making time. So that's been really helpful for me. So yeah, I guess you're right. It's really sort of about just finding what works for you, but you listed so many great ideas. So thank you.
Yeah, I think, having a sense of purpose is really critical for maintaining brain health. It's interesting. I saw a statistic once that if you rank the countries where people retire the earliest and you put them in order, it's also almost exactly aligns with the earlier onset of cognitive decline and dementia in those countries where people retire the earliest. Staying actively engaged in life, providing meaning for others, not just your spouse or your loved one with dementia, but giving back, doing this, like you're literally educating people right now. That's really valuable. You're using your platform to spread this message far and wide. I'm usually either in a research lab pipetting stuff or seeing patients or whatever. I don't have a platform like this, and that's what you're doing. You're using your platform, and that provides meaning, and that provides hope, and that provides inspiration. I hope that's helpful for mitigating stress and kind of putting one foot in front of the other each day. But yeah, I think each person needs to find what works for them, but take it seriously. It's not, I was wrong for a long time. Mind over matter, stress. Come on, man, just keep going. That's not good. That causes, now I know, biologically, inflammation. Inflammation fast forwards aging, both brain aging and body aging. And guess what? That's why caregivers of people with Alzheimer's or other dementias actually pass away earlier. So taking care of yourself, staying in balance, exercise on a regular basis, can't underscore the importance. It's like, I mean, exercise and nutrition, fine, but it's like as important in a lot of ways, stress modification and adequate sleep, than almost any other medical or lifestyle change a person can make.
Okay, so I love to end Make Time to Connect on something hopeful. Can you tell me something new and exciting that's happening in the world of neurology? I mean, you were just saying that there's all these different blood tests and all, but just sort of tell us what is new, what is exciting, what can we look forward to in your world?
Yeah, so I'll be honest. I can't believe what's happened in the last several months and even I would say couple of years, but this is honestly the last 6 months. The curve has just been like mind blowing. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we had 25 years ago, we had like nothing. 20 years ago, we had a couple little things, symptomatic things. 15 years ago, I was trying my best, fish oil, okay, in the right person at the right dose, and okay, B complex vitamins, okay, not on everybody, but whatever. We didn't talk about vitamins or supplements, but that's a big part of this plan too. The right doses and the right stuff for the right people. And then, 5 to 7 years ago, we're like, wait a minute, look at genetics. And depending on this gene, if a person has this gene, we better do this, this, and this. So personalized medicine, precision medicine. And then just, I wish we would have learned all of these things ages ago, because it's not really fair that, we're learning all this stuff now, because too many people and, my patients, your husband, like all of these people in different areas and different diet, whenever they were diagnosed at different epochs, they're missing out on a lot of these things. And, in terms of drugs, there are several new FDA approved drugs. There's going to probably be another one, in the coming months. That's an anti-amyloid drug. And, I wouldn't say that I really ascribe to the fact that amyloid protein that we talked about earlier causes dementia per se. It's associated with, and I think it's a part of the picture. And amyloid, again, is involved in some neurodegenerative dementias. And there's other neurodegenerative dementias that are even more complicated. There's tau, and there's all sorts of things, and inflammation. But there are now drugs that target these proteins that we just didn't have in the past. And I think there's been a lot of controversy and confusion. And again, I have nothing to disclose. I'm not funded by, or don't take compensation from any drug companies that I'm talking about. But these drugs, in the right person at the right dose, used really carefully, and we use them really slowly. We don't hit people too hard and fast, because you can have, potentially serious side effects. But if you use them slowly in the right person, right dose, they can really be helpful. 35% slowing of disease. That's every 3 years. You're only going to decline every 2 years, just with the drug alone. But I think you've learned about what I do when we've, talked today, for example. Exercise on a regular basis, plus plus the B vitamins, plus the sleep, plus the nutrition. We've had really amazing outcomes with the drugs, plus everything else. And, in terms of what I'm most excited about, we can now use these blood tests, which I've been wanting to access for a long time. And I can't believe this, but literally within a month or so, we will finally be able to actually send someone to go in 28 states. We have, the ability to do this, to go around and actually do blood tests on someone, either before they have symptoms or when they have symptoms, and basically get a whole panel of exactly what's going on in the blood. No expensive spinal taps, no painful spinal tap, no expensive PET scans with radiation, $5,000. These blood tests are going to become the future. There's even at-home blood tests that are going to come. This is crazy, but we can do a finger prick test. It's not perfect, but we're going to get there. We are literally able to, it's kind of like the cholesterol test for the brain. This is kind of what I've been kind of colloquially calling it. We can do these tests. We can do this decades before. If we see the amyloid going up, well, then we're going to give a treatment X. We're going to up the tau, or we're going to do this. And then we can evaluate the response. So now if someone has high cholesterol, you do exercise and diet, we check the cholesterol up, it's working or it's not, then you need a drug. Same thing with dementia. And this is, our research is through the Institute for Neurodegenerative Diseases of Florida. You can learn about our work. It's a nonprofit, indflorida.org. All the kind of summaries are on there. But we're basically drawing these blood tests on people, and then we're going to different people get different treatments for their medical diseases, like a statin for cholesterol, or the new weight loss drug Mounjaro, which a lot of people are talking about. Well, now we have data that shows that some of these drugs actually may be protective on the brain while also treating other medical conditions. And that's really exciting. We just presented on mid-June 2023 at Harvard Medical School at Mass General Brigham. We just presented data on our patients that we've been following. And of the 19 patients, small group, we have about 50 something in the cohort, and just results back on 19 of the 50, where we got baseline amyloid and tau, and then follow up. I think this is the first video I'm talking about this in the public, where I'm not in a scientific grand rounds. 4 of the 19 people had reductions or improvements in amyloid and tau to the point where they're no longer above the threshold to meet criteria for pathologic Alzheimer's disease. Like, hold on a second, and when I presented these results, people were very confused. And I'm confused, because I've seen people get a little better or stabilize, but I've never seen the amyloid and tau go down. And we have our first case ever that had a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, which is the earliest symptomatic phase related to dementia. In this case, it was mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's. This person got the kitchen sink. It was an ApoE3/4 case. He was in his mid-50s. We hit him with everything. We hit him with the cholesterol drugs and the injectable ones and the heart stuff and the exercise and nutrition. We put him on valacyclovir because he had a herpes virus, and that got controlled, and that reduced neuroinflammation. That guy really responded well. We used TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. We used an anti-amyloid drug for 18 months and a very low dose, and really carefully, and finished his 18 months. And then we repeated this stuff. We did every single thing in the book in the last year and a half. And on the spinal tap, on the PET scan, and also in the blood tests, we have alignment and agreement that the amyloid is now gone, the tau is reduced, and the cognition improved, and he no longer meets criteria for pathological Alzheimer's disease. This is all real. This isn't like not embellished. This is all real. This is all will be published. So full disclosure, hasn't been published yet. But that's what I'm excited about. In the past, we used to say, oh, exercise, oh, it's good for the brain. Yeah, it's good for brain health. And the skeptics would say, come on, man, you're not preventing Alzheimer's. You're not treating Alzheimer's, whatever. It's placebo effect, or you're reducing vascular risk factors so they're improving. Well, no, in 20%, not everybody, but in 20% of the cases we've done this in, we've actually shown target engagement. So that's what I'm excited about. Still early, very early. 54 people in the cohort. We need like a lot more to definitively prove this. So I don't want to get too excited. And again, this is preliminary stuff, but it's real. It's real, and it's presented at major conferences and discussion groups. But the thing I think I'm also really excited about is kind of democratizing care. And when I talk about democratizing care, I mean, not everyone can get to Florida to get blood tests. Not everyone can, sign up for a trial in 28 states and have a person come to their house and do blood draws and participate in all this research, because it's tough, it's time consuming. But almost everyone has a phone, and almost everyone has heard about, this artificial intelligence craze, right? Where we can use, software to help guide people and provide information. And what we've done, and we have NIH funding for this, and this is, again, all free. It's a website called retainyourbrain.com or yourbrainstudy.org. Later this year, people are going to be able to go online and sign up for a research study using their phone. And they can take a little risk assessment to figure out what their individual risk factors are. They can then take a memory test from their phone to figure out where they are as a baseline. And then the software can follow people over time and do a risk assessment. After 6 months, figure out, okay, I've learned a lot about you. Let's do something to reduce your risk. And that's amazing. This 5-year waiting list, that's terrible. That's sad. That's not fair. That's not equity. That's not good access. That's bad. Just being able to afford a trip to New York City or South Florida, and only those are the people that can come to receive this care, that's not okay. Democratizing care through software, through a cell phone, and having a conversation, literally an automated conversation with a virtual clinician, a virtual neurologist. We need to now prove or evaluate the effectiveness of this approach. And that's what I'm also pretty excited about. I have also excitements about genetics and whole genome sequencing and fancy stuff. We've been working on this for years, but unfortunately, when you have 20 million gene parts you need to look at, we've only looked at 31 people in 2 years. And only about 40% of the people we looked at did we find something that made a transformative impact on their care. And that's not good enough. And that's too hard. And it took like months and months and months and tens of thousands of dollars each person. I mean, it was this crazy. We haven't even published a study yet. We're working on it literally this summer. We're trying to get this out there. But I think one day whole genome sequencing isn't going to be thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. You're going to get a little finger prick, put it in a computer, and it'll spit out, what the person needs to do based on their genetics and based on their risk factors. And I think that's what I'm excited about. We're still 3 to 5 to 7 years away, I think, from, getting more excited about that, probably 5 to 7 years. But blood-based biomarkers, if you haven't heard about them, in the coming couple of years, anyone should be able to go to their doctor and get these tests to know their risk, and knowledge is power. So that's what I'm excited about.
I love your passion. We don't deserve you. I mean, you just bring so much to the table. You're so passionate, and I can't thank you enough for everything that you have done for me over the years. And I just really appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming on. There's just so much information here. Send me all of those links so I can, I'm going to include it at the bottom of this video so that everyone can sort of link to all things that you've mentioned.
Great. Thank you for the time, and thank you for spreading the message far and wide.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Be strong. Take care.
Thank you.